Motörhead's second album of 1979, released in the autumn after Overkill, which sort of finally put them on the musical map. Early 79 was released. Then it was released in early 79. And yeah, so Bomber was kind of very much rushed out to sort of keep motor momentum going, as it were. Um, it's none the worse for that, really. Um, it's when it's compared to Overkill, the two albums on the same year, it usually comes off a bit worse. But I've never heard anyone say it's a bad album, and quite the opposite. It's one of the Motörhead's classic albums from the classic lineup. The main thing with it, well, all the members of Motörhead had, and Lemmy often said, was a lot of the songs. I think most of the songs on Bomber had not been road tested, as it were, unlike on Overkill. Whereas, I mean, you can hear Damage Case or I'll Be Your Sister. You can hear them quite early Motörhead when they were still 77 or something, like Blitzkrieg on Birmingham, or of that, maybe not that album, but that era when they were still kind of struggling. Anyway, this is a recording about, this is a video about Bomber. So the songs they released, they were knocked up on the road as they were touring intensely. And so, yeah, the songs were sort of knocked up during sound check and stuff when they could grab a minute. And they went back into the studio to do this one. And again, they had Jimmy Miller engineering. Jimmy Miller, who'd sort of made his name doing numerous bands, and including the Rolling Stones, during a period of which he probably acquired his heroin habit, which he'd managed to quit whilst recording Overkill. It was kind of a mutual favour. Jimmy Miller had kind of been out of fashion, and he had this drug problem, so he could get back in the studio, and Motörhead could get a famous producer engineer. So they were doing each other a favour. So when Motörhead went back in to record Bomber, it was obvious, sadly, that Jimmy Miller was back on the gear, and they said, Filthy Animal Taylor always said, we thought we were bad at being late, but Jimmy Miller would come in like half a day late. We say, I'm just popping out for a minute, and then 3 hours later they were still looking for him, and he'd gone into the female toilets of the studio, shot up and done whatever, and passed out, and no one thought to look for him in the female toilets. But despite his problems, they got the album done. It was the last album they're going to do with Jimmy Miller, perhaps unsurprisingly, and also unsurprisingly, it contains Motörhead's anti-heroin anthem, Dead Men Tell No Tales. If you're doing smack, you won't be coming back, because Lemmy's seen it any number of times now. It was the love of his life. I think her name was Susan, who died shortly before he joined Hawkwind, about the same time he joined Hawkwind. She got a lethal heroin habit and shot up in the bath and drowned, I think. Pretty horrible. So Lemmy was, completely had this hatred of it. I think he saw one of his friends in Wimpy when they were very young. This guy was going to withdrawals, so Lemmy and his friends all clubbed together to give him some money so he could go and get sorted out. And he came in, he went to the toilets at a Wimpy bar in London. He went into the toilets, and Lemmy said he came staggering back out, his face turning black, and he dropped dead on the floor. Apparently someone had sold him rat poison. He injected it. So it's just... Anyway, so Lemmy, not to go on about it, Lemmy obviously hates the stuff. Dead Men Tell No Tales. Tracks, just looking at tracks here. Right. Okay, so Dead Men Tell No Tales, he said Lawman. Lemmy takes a pop at the force of law and order, and kind of dressed up on that sort of Clint Eastwoody type thing they had. The sheriff and his posse, and they're outlaws and stuff. Apparently Eddie Clark had a big Clint Eastwood fetish, good man. Yeah, Clint Eastwood's the man of no name type thing. So it's kind of lawman, and they do it again, even better, I think, on the Ace of Spades album, Shoot You in the Back. Sweet Revenge don't get on Lemmy's SHIT list. I can't talk to you now, I'm too busy with the knife or something. The lyrics. Sharpshooter. Yeah, it's alright. That's one of the more sort of fillery tracks for me. Infrared Babe, Don't You Come Out at Night or something. I don't know. Just felt a bit rushed, that one. Poison, really good track. Love that track. And sort of Lemmy's, rather say, his relationship or lack of one with his father. My old father, he used to be a preacher, never taught me anything but scorn, all sort of thing. He'd run out of the family when Lemmy was the grand age of 3 months old. They'd met again at a pizza place when Lemmy was 25 and trying to earn a living through music. And his dad said, no, that's no good for you, but I'll give you some money so you can set yourself up as a commercial traveller. And Lemmy said, it's a good job the pizza hasn't come yet, or you'd be wearing it as a hat. And left. He said never saw him again. So that's Poison, Side B, Six Stone Dead Forever. Just love that song so much. As a little point of reference, also, if you speed up the intro to Stone Dead Forever, you got We Are Motörhead from 2000. Yeah, brilliant track. That lovely warty bass, and as Fast Lee once said, Christ, did I play that? Did I really play that guitar? At the end, mad lead guitar and stuff. And Eddie sometimes got, old people would say like guitarists like Robbo overshadowed him with technique and stuff. But Eddie was rock and roll. Eddie was rock and roll, just amped up, which was Motörhead. I mean, absolute brilliant guitarist. All the Aces, really good track. Lemmy already taking pop at the record company or the business side, I think, the music industry. They all thought they're being ripped off. Step Down, 8. So I do hear a lot of blues generally in this album, even on the heavier tracks. Eddie's playing seems far more bluesy on this one. Step Down was, well, it was Eddie's number. He sang it. Lemmy said he was getting fed up with Lemmy. Eddie was always moaning that he wasn't getting the recognition that Lemmy was getting. And it was a common thing in Motörhead. Wurzel would blow his top about, Lemmy getting too much, or he perceiving that Lemmy got all the attention. But the thing about Lemmy was he was a complete publicity hound. I mean, he lived for it. He was a rock star, and he was quite happy to do whatever. He got offered a film role, whatever. He dressed up in magazines. I've seen him as I suppose, the agony uncle. He's answering readers' problems. He starts off, I just got out of a mental home. Oh, good. While I was in there, I broke up with my boyfriend. So let me go. He was in there too. Yeah, he was quite happy to do all this. Whereas some of the other members, it was like they wanted their privacy, but at the same time they wanted to be like really known. And it was like, well, you can't have one. It's sort of one or the other. But anyway, so Lemmy said, Eddie was always moaning, when you get all the attention. So he said, right, you're going to sing a number. And then Eddie wanted to back off. And Lemmy sort of forced him to do it. He said getting him to do it live was like pulling hen's teeth. I mean, you see on the, I think it's in Nottingham, it's on YouTube, Motörhead 79 or 80, Nottingham Bomber tour. And he does it, Step Down. And at the end, Lemmy says, he's good, isn't he? But he hates doing it. And Fast Eddie says, oh, I hate it, but there you go. Pretty average blues number for me, really. Lemmy was quite complimentary of Eddie's vocals. He was good enough as a backing vocalist, as a lead vocalist, and think he's anything special. Whereas Wurzel, who Lemmy also did compliment, Wurzel, I thought, a really good voice. You listen to Wurzel's solo stuff like Midnight in London, really good. Talking Head, I love that track. It's so true. The television screen, your face turned green. It's so true. The TV, God, watch people like that watching it, all the crap it spouts. But Lemmy was like, in his autobiography, White Line Fever. He says, so he's talking about Bomb. He says a couple of naff tracks on that album, like Talking Head. It's like, oh, but I really like that. And also there's a bass solo at the end, which is another one to play to the Lemmy couldn't play the bass at all type crowd, because it's really weavy and fast. But I've tried doing it, and it's like, yeah, it's so hard. It's difficult. And finally, Bomber. Now this is a track that I'm just going on Wikipedia just to make sure I get all the tracks. But did they jiggle the track listing? Because I swear Bomber used to be like halfway through side 2. A really odd like the title track was like buried kind of in the middle of side two. It seems like they've jiggled it around a bit, and now Bomber's like at the end, or what would be side two, or the end of the CD or whatever. Yeah, Bomber. I mean, there's some tracks that there's a lot of tracks on like Stone Dead Forever, which I love and stuff, but then there's some that it's like Overkill, the track Overkill. Motörhead put out tracks that kind of changed the musical map, and Bomber was one, and you could tell for the effect Bomber had, like the stone in the metaphorical pond and the ripples immediately coming out, because suddenly, because of Bomber, then you've got the Bomber truss rig, whatever you call it, actually coming down and all that, which in 1979 would have been serious, serious stuff. And Eddie said if ever a gig was going badly or wrong, or sound was crap, or they just weren't on or feeling it, it'd be like bring down the Bomber, and it would just steal the show, and everyone would be happy. So just by that, you can tell it was a great track, because it just knocked on had all these effects on, had all these knock-on effects, I should say. And yeah, Bomber. So Lemmy said he was inspired by reading it, the Len Dayton, I think it's how pronounced his surname. Anyway, it was a novel called Bomber, about the crew of a Lancaster bomber, funny enough, going on a German bombing raid over a German city, and it's told from various perspectives, like the crew, a German family, I think, in the city that's bombed. I tried to read it, I couldn't get on with it. It's done in real time, so as you're reading it, they don't sort of skip anything, apparently. And Lemmy was inspired by that. So that's Bomber, and it says released with bonus tracks. 4 of which just seem to be the live EP, Leaving Here, Stone Dead Forever, Dead Men Tell No Tales, Too Late, Too Late. It's the live EP. I only want Over the Top. Yeah, so that's Bomber. It's a very different. Yeah, it's got more bluesy feel, I say, than Overkill. Overkill's very much sort of. And that was when Motörhead really kind of established their sound. It's their sound. Wasn't their first album. That would have been Motörhead Motor 77. That was sort of, I've already done a thing about that. It was more sort of pub rock and Motörhead Hawkwind covers and all that kind of stuff that frantically cobbled together to get their set. Whereas Overkill, that gave birth to the Motörhead sound, and Bomber still, but that's what I liked about it. It's kind of different. All Motörhead albums to me are really different, and they have different kind of feels. And this one had a more bluesy feel, even on the hard rock tracks, like say All the Aces. And it's just Fast Eddie's tone, maybe. Yeah, it got released. It did well. It gave the world Bomber. It bumped up their stage set because of that, and it carried them on through nicely to their absolute, the apex of their career, which was the Ace of Spades era, which was the album coming shortly.